It's called The View?
It's called The View. It's not called The Facts.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
There
is one view.
Right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
Sunny Hostin found herself at the center of an unexpected media moment after sharp criticism from both Bill Maher and Megyn Kelly gained traction. What began as a routine on-air discussion quickly turned into a widely discussed exchange that caught many viewers off guard. First, Hostin appeared composed and confident, engaging as usual on The View and giving no indication that the conversation was about to shift. Moments later, however, the tone changed dramatically. Commentaries circulating afterward portrayed her as struggling to regain footing as the criticism intensified, creating a moment that felt sudden and disorienting to audiences watching unfold. Observers noted that the exchange left Hostin visibly unsettled, as if the discussion had moved faster than expected. Comparisons quickly spread online, describing the moment as one where the conversation slipped out of sync, leaving little room for recovery. Bill Maher, for his part, did not hold back. His response was immediate and pointed, accelerating the situation into a broader media clash. What followed felt less like a structured debate and more like a rapidly escalating confrontation, packed with overlapping reactions and heightened tension. The segment quickly took on a life of its own, drawing comparisons to unscripted television moments where control gives way to unpredictability. The speed and intensity of the exchange ensured it wouldn't be easily forgotten, marking yet another instance where live commentary crossed into viral territory.
They're disgusting. She's Anna Navarro in your wildest imagination. You could never solo host a show. You will only ever make it as part of an ensemble, and you could never hope to achieve the success that Tucker Carlson has. So you can sit in your little cheap seats all day long and enjoy your little negative henpecking, but your careers are going nowhere, and Tucker is about to...
Bill Maher and Megyn Kelly, both known for speaking candidly without hesitation, appeared to reach a breaking point in their response to Sunny Hostin's on-air style. Rather than engaging in a prolonged back and forth, each approached the moment with a distinctly different but complementary strategy. Maher relied on his trademark dry humor and pointed irony, using brevity and timing to challenge the arguments being presented. Kelly, by contrast, adopted a more methodical approach, calmly laying out her points with precision and clarity. Together, their responses shifted the balance of the discussion in a way that was difficult to ignore. What had once been a familiar platform for confident commentary suddenly appeared far less stable. The exchange gave the impression that established talking points were being tested under pressure, revealing weaknesses that might otherwise have gone unchallenged. Rather than feeling like a standard debate, the moment unfolded more like a collision of styles and preparation. While Hostin leaned on her usual rhetorical approach, Maher and Kelly arrived with tightly structured arguments, creating a contrast that reshaped the tone of the conversation and left a strong impression on viewers watching the exchange play out.
Talk about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before. Sure. So she was, everybody was like, "Oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma." First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no fucking thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide. But
let's take a closer look at a familiar pattern viewers often associate with Sunny Hostin. One of her most recognizable habits on air is leaning heavily on her legal background to reinforce her arguments. As a former federal prosecutor, she frequently references her credentials as a way to establish authority early in a discussion. While professional experience can add valuable perspective, critics argue that it sometimes becomes a substitute for substance rather than a supplement to it. When arguments are framed primarily around credentials, the conversation can shift away from evidence and toward moral certainty, leaving little room for debate or alternative viewpoints. Observers note that this approach often results in commentary that feels predictable and overly forceful. Instead of inviting discussion, it can come across as a lecture, delivered with an assumption of intellectual superiority rather than an openness to challenge or nuance. The result, according to critics, is a style that prioritizes confidence over persuasion. What might otherwise be an informative legal perspective can turn into a performance focused more on asserting authority than engaging with facts. For some viewers, it feels less like analysis and more like a one-sided presentation, where conviction replaces conversation.
That hot mess that they air in the mornings, called The View, had to issue not one, not two, not three, but 4 corrections, legal corrections, 4 legal notes. Not to mention what they did at that debate, where once again, they tried to fact check only one side, and then when their fact checks got fact checked, they cowered. They cowered in fear. I mean, this is a...
One recurring criticism aimed at Sunny Hostin is her tendency to broaden nearly any topic into a much larger social critique. Viewers have noted that even light or unrelated subjects can quickly become starting points for discussions about systemic issues, often delivered with strong conviction and certainty. While some audience members appreciate this perspective-driven approach, others feel it stretches connections too far. They argue that not every cultural moment or everyday topic requires deep political or social framing, and that this habit can sometimes overwhelm the original discussion. Critics also point out that the intensity of her delivery can amplify this effect. When conclusions are presented with absolute confidence, it can leave little space for alternative interpretations or nuance, making conversations feel more performative than exploratory at times. Even fellow panelists appear visibly disengaged as these moments unfold, suggesting a disconnect between the direction of the discussion and the expectations of the broader conversation. For some viewers, this pattern has come to represent a style that prioritizes dramatic framing over balance, contributing to moments that feel more chaotic than constructive.
Term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't know, want to call it the super far left, but don't tell me the left
Or maybe the super far right. Well, he's talking about the left. Well, then
okay, but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Sunny Hostin did not simply face disagreement during this exchange. She encountered a level of pushback that fundamentally altered the tone of the discussion. What stood out most was her familiar expression of moral frustration, a reaction viewers have come to recognize when her arguments are challenged directly. Holding strong views is not unusual on a panel built around debate. However, critics argue that Hostin often transforms conversations into declarative monologues rather than exchanges of ideas. Instead of dialogue, the discussion can resemble a courtroom-style presentation in which she assumes multiple roles at once, presenting the case, weighing the verdict, and signaling approval. That approach, however, met resistance from Bill Maher and Megyn Kelly. Neither relied on crowd validation or emotional framing. Instead, they responded with structured reasoning, documented points, and pointed humor, which quickly shifted the balance of the exchange. Observers noted that when confronted with straightforward counterarguments, Hostin did not adjust her approach. Rather than recalibrating, she appeared to reinforce her original position with greater intensity. For critics, this moment highlighted a recurring pattern: confidence escalating in place of persuasion. The result was a dynamic where volume and certainty competed against logic and evidence, reshaping the conversation in a way that many viewers found revealing.
And finally, new rules. Stop saying that Whoopi Goldberg getting yanked from The View right after she attacked me on The View is karma. There's no such thing as karma. Sorry. Sorry, but life is random. The only word to describe it when a big game hunter gets trampled by an elephant and then eaten by lions is hilarious.
Bill Maher, drawing on years of experience in public debate, appeared largely unshaken as the exchange played out. Rather than jumping in immediately, he allowed the moment to develop, observing quietly as the argument unfolded. From his perspective, the points being made required little interruption. As the presentation began to weaken on its OWS, the discussion continued. Critics noted that Sunny Hostin's extended remarks leaned heavily on familiar rhetorical themes. The repetition of charged language and moral framing, delivered with strong conviction, gradually overshadowed the substance of the argument. To some viewers, the approach felt more performative than persuasive, causing the message to lose clarity and impact. It was at this point that Megyn Kelly entered the conversation. Her response stood out for its restraint and precision. Without raising her voice or relying on dramatic emphasis, she addressed the claims directly, breaking them down step by step with a focus on logic and structure. Kelly's methodical approach shifted the tone of the exchange. By calmly challenging assumptions and removing layers of polished presentation, she redirected attention to the underlying arguments themselves. What remained, observers noted, was a discussion stripped of flourish and driven instead by careful analysis, leaving a strong impression on those watching the exchange unfold.
We had a discussion on The View about world superpowers from the sound of it. That's how they got into it. And Sunny Hostin made some comments about patriotism and America and Black America. It's all in there, Jason. I mean, it's all in there. I'm going to tee it up. It starts with Alyssa Farah, who's supposed to be the Republican commentator. And then you'll hear Sunny jump in. Listen.
If America is not the #1 global power, it's not going to be Denmark. It's going to be communist China, a country that right now the government is imprisoning Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. It is a deeply racist government. It's a human rights violating government. It is a government that if they are the leader of the free world, we are not a free world the way that we are right now.
So the notion of patriotism and the notion of America and the American flag has been co-opted by the right as if they are true patriots. But when I listen to Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, he said white supremacy is the biggest domestic threat to this.
Critics argue that Sunny Hostin's on-air style is built around control rather than exchange. Her strongest moments tend to come during extended monologues, where ideas are framed through moral certainty instead of tested through dialogue. In those moments, disagreement is often treated as wrongdoing, and nuance is replaced by firm declarations that leave little room for challenge. That approach works best in environments where pushback is limited. But when someone like Megyn Kelly calmly questions even a single assumption, the dynamic changes instantly. The structure supporting the argument begins to strain, not because of volume or aggression, but because the foundation isn't designed to withstand direct scrutiny. What followed wasn't a minor stumble or an isolated misstatement. It was a visible breakdown in momentum, where confidence gave way to hesitation and the narrative lost coherence. When a public persona is rooted heavily in moral authority rather than adaptability, even modest resistance can feel destabilizing. In this case, the shift was impossible to miss. The carefully maintained composure gave way to an uncomfortable pause, leaving the impression that the argument had collapsed under its own weight. For viewers, it wasn't just an awkward television moment. It was a clear illustration of how fragile certainty can be when it finally meets calm, focused opposition.
Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States, yay, on January 20th of this month. Not everyone's happy about it, and many people would like us to be more focused on the insurrection that he personally unleashed. If you ask them, as we discussed earlier, they think it's as bad as like the Holocaust, and you don't have to take my word for it. Here is Sunny Hostin of
January
The View
6th was an
today.
atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery.
Yeah, the January 6th is right up there next to the Holocaust. And
Megyn Kelly's presence alone seems to shift the temperature of the room. The moment her name enters the conversation, Sunny Hostin's tone noticeably changes, as if a silent alarm has been tripped. Kelly doesn't raise her voice or lean into theatrics. She doesn't need to. Her approach is simple, and in that setting, strangely disruptive. She speaks clearly, relies on verifiable facts, and walks through arguments step by step that on a panel built around emotional reaction and rapid-fire opinion. That kind of precision can feel almost out of place. Kelly lays out data, explains timelines, and cites sources without dramatic pauses or moral posturing. The calm itself becomes the point. There's no performance, no outrage-driven momentum, just structured reasoning delivered without apology. In contrast, Sunny reacts as if each point represents a looming political emergency, responding less to what's actually being said and more to what she believes it symbolizes. The exchange turns uneven quickly. While Kelly methodically dismantles the narrative in front of her, Sunny appears to grapple with an argument that isn't yielding to volume or indignation. For viewers, the moment stands out not because of confrontation, but because of contrast. Composure versus escalation. Evidence versus implication. And in that imbalance, it becomes clear just how unsettling calm, sourced reasoning can be in a space accustomed to emotional dominance.
I want you to note the tone they all talk with him. I want you to look at Sunny Hostin's body language and the way they look at him and everything else. Just because he is a lefty who hasn't gone completely bananas, here they are talking about the word woke.
The term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
Why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words...
Sunny Hostin enters the conversation armed with emotional smoke bombs, dramatic pauses, and hand gestures that resemble interpretive dance routines for abstract injustice. Every point arrives wrapped in outrage first, substance second. Megyn Kelly, meanwhile, responds with calm, deliberate reasoning that slices through the noise like a guided missile. The contrast is jarring, that it's like watching someone bring a coloring book to a chess tournament, then melt down when the other player actually knows how the pieces move. You can almost see Sunny's internal processing freeze whenever Megyn references data, logic, or historical context. The gears grind. The script falters. When facts appear, Sunny retreats into a fortress of indignation, arguing as if 2 + 2 somehow equals systemic injustice, then reacting with visible disbelief when Megyn metaphorically pulls out a calculator and proves otherwise. Logic isn't countered. It's treated as an offense, and the confusion doesn't stop there. Sunny seems to interpret sarcasm as hostility and comedy as emotional warfare, responding with exaggerated reactions that only deepen the spectacle. What unfolds isn't a debate. It's a collision between performance and precision, where volume keeps losing to clarity.